Americans that visited Europe, what was the biggest shock for you? History. I followed a tour of American tourists into the church in downtown. Question gets asked, is this the oldest church in town? Heard reply. Chuckle, oh no, the old church is on the north side of the river. This church was built in 1310. Just a different perspective on history. 100% true. And also, for me, was the size of those cathedrals. The size of the huge stones they are built with, and the fact that they were built over 1,000 years ago. Like, how? How did they get those massive stones, get them here and then hoist them up 12 stories, or whatever, to place them there? It hurts my brain. Does not compute. I'm Dutch, but I'll never forget my American girlfriend's reaction to seeing rows and rows of parked bicycles in front of the train station when she came to visit the Netherlands. Oh my god, look at all those bikes. You can drink a beer anywhere, anytime. I mean, I woke up in Berlin and bought a bottle of beer at a small breakfast stand in a park. It was like 6 a.m. Drinking beers in parks is the ultimate European pastime, that's all we do. The only thing that really surprised me was how much pedestrians trusted cars to not hit them. How young the US truly is. How old a lot of the cities are. People still living in buildings older than the US. Walking down some of the old streets feels like you're time traveling into a medieval fairy tale. When I was in Dublin in 1988, they were celebrating their millennium. I went to Scotland. Ran across some German tourist who asked us to translate what the Scot was saying. We were all three speaking English. They just couldn't understand each other. When I ordered a small drink, it was actually small. First time in Spain. 22-30 son still out, parents sitting, drinking, relaxing while kids run up and down. Felt so completely safe and comfortable. I'm living in Spain right now for a couple months, from UK. It's nice to go to a fast food place late at night, the place be packed with 16-year-olds, and I don't feel like I'm going to get threatened with a knife or have something thrown at me. The culture for kids, teens is so different here. Saw a bunch of children just playing in a playground at like 11 p.m. last Sunday. LOL, the age of all the buildings. Walked into a pub in the UK with a plaque that read something like, this building was constructed in the year 2 and was used by monks to fend off dinosaurs. Maybe not the exact words, but you get it. I live in Germany, and I can walk down the road and there's a town hall from 1542. That's just the norm over here. The amount of smoking. I have a close friend in Europe, she's talked about the public transportation and the way the cities are laid out to be beneficial to walking and biking. But nothing prepared me for the amount for smoking I saw when I was in Paris, Helsinki, Tampere, and Turku. The amount of smoking. I have a close friend in Europe, she's talked about the public transportation and the way the cities are laid out to be beneficial to walking and biking. But nothing prepared me for the amount for smoking I saw when I was in Paris, Helsinki, Tampere, and Turku. Same in Eastern Europe, most of peers that are smokers started in early high school. Everyone and their mom seems to smoke. I was an art student and we could smoke inside the ateliers, and I remember a professor that brought an old radio with him, played a surprisingly cheerful song, lit up a cigarette and started brooding around our work before speaking a single word. Lots of restaurants also have smoking tables where you can smoke almost inside, depends on the place. In France people get 2-hour lunches. Like some stores will have 2 separate open and close times cause they'll just shut down for 2 hours a day to enjoy themselves. Most people seemed much happier and relaxed as a whole. In Spain most places just close from 2 to 5 in the afternoon so the owners can have a lunch and nap break. I absolutely hated it because I always forgot, and it's my usual time to go get stuff, but hey, definitely good for them. 1. How everything is less sugary, sweet. 2. How people just walk away from minor vehicle bumps, scrapes. In the US they would pull over and at minimum exchange info, if not call the police. 3. In France, the lack of casual wear in public, like t-shirts, sports clothing. 4. How restaurants aren't about pumping people in and out and no one is really in a rush, Paris. 5. Much smaller size vehicles. Go to a typical parking lot in America and greater than 50% will be SUV or trucks. I barely saw any SUV trucks in London or Paris. In Italy, the shower at one of my hotels had no barriers to keep the water in one general area. It was just a drain in the floor. Luckily it was just that one, and it was definitely an older hotel. Also, I was really surprised that the price was exactly what the price tag said. I love that the tax is rolled in, especially while I learned the currency. I am pretty sure 99% of countries do this with price tags, tax. It's only the USA that doesn't do this. Always catches me out when I visit the USA. I come from New Zealand, have extensively traveled. No offense, fucking damn how you Yanks don't include it on the tags. I lived in Europe for 5 years, 2011 to 2016, specifically in Amsterdam. There were a lot of interesting little cultural quirks, of course, but there was only one thing I saw while living there that literally made me slam on my bicycle brakes and go back to see if I saw it right, which was of all things a Sesame Street live poster. You see, turns out Big Bird, or his equivalent, in the Netherlands and several other countries is blue. The Dutch will insist that it's actually Big Bird's cousin, Pino, but I wasn't fooled. You know, he just escaped to the Netherlands to seek an alternative lifestyle. So yeah, I'm sure OP wanted something more serious and profound, but that was the biggest shock for sure, because who expects that? Europe is a lot better in public transportation, lots of buses, trams. 100%, and it's very noticeable going the other way too. Went to LA once assuming I'd just be able to zip around by tube or bus. Ended up paying a fortune in taxes. The public transport was basically non-existent. Was the first time I realized that many of the things we just completely take for granted were put in place with a lot of effort over many generations. I heard a story of a lady who was dumbfounded that there weren't going to be fireworks celebrating the 4th of July. Couldn't conceive the idea that other countries don't celebrate America's Independence Day. I've been asked by numerous Americans over the years if we celebrate 4th of July in my home country in Eastern Europe. Young children were using public transportation, i.e., city bus, subway, not escorted by adults to get to and from school rather than a designated yellow bus. Where I am from, public transportation is barely usable by adults, much less children. Remind me when I try to explain to my girlfriend that it's normal for kids who are 10 to walk themselves to school here. She told me I'm going to get my kids killed, lol. I was in Switzerland for a few days. I felt like the fattest person in the country at 6 feet 0 inches, 210 pounds. It was also amazing to me that it felt like two different countries going from Geneva to Zurich. The language went from French to German, with the architecture completely different between the two cities. Absolutely beautiful country. The first thing I noticed in Switzerland at the train station was how beautiful and well dressed everyone was. I felt like I went from being good looking in my country to looking like a troll in comparison. Public transit where I'm from is not a place to dress up. I went to Europe, I drank all the booze, ate all the food, stayed 2 months and lost 20 pounds. Americans aren't overweight because we're lazy or gluttons or anything else, we're overweight because we are being fed *****. My grandma took me back to England at the end of my 8th grade year to see my nana as well as where she grew up. I still remember quite vividly finding out that there's a very big difference between what's allowed on TV in England and what was allowed on TV in the United States regarding nudity. As a young boy, this was a very exciting discovery. Edit, I should also add that my entire experience with British culture had up until this point been through my grandma, who was very formal and proper. I played soccer at an incredibly high level in the States, so she managed to arrange a time for me to go play with a local academy team in Norwich for the afternoon. I'm still not sure how she managed to do this. I will never forget how foul-mouthed everyone was, coaches included. This took me entirely by surprise. I will also never forget how humbling that experience was, because I was nowhere near as good as I thought I was. I could hold my own, but my goodness, I was certainly in the bottom half of the talent pool that day. I was surprised how many people still smoke cigarettes and how common it was to have people smoking in outdoor restaurants and bars. It has gotten to the point you almost never smell cigarette smoke in those places in most of the USA. Personal bubble is very different. It shocks you at first, and you feel sort of claustrophobic, but then you get used to it, too. It's kind of subtle until you come back to the States and unconsciously stand so close to someone else in a line that they start shooting you dirty looks. Quite the opposite here in the Nordic countries, lol. Yeah, that's the problem with asking about Europe. Europe is not a country. Europe is 44 different countries with sometimes drastically different cultures and social norms. American living in Sweden. Most people don't respect Americans until they meet you and confirm that you're not one of those Americans. People drink literally at any chance they get. Every apartment has an electric bath towel warmer. It's pretty standard apparently. Boobs on TV. The vegetables are exponentially smaller, BC they are not genetically modified. Fruit-flavored sodas are required to have fruit juice in it, so the Fanta sodas here are more like a spicy Sunny D. They are hardcore about recycling out here. Tipping culture doesn't really exist. The bank is never fucking open. Ground floor is not the first floor. It's the 0th floor. Celsius. Well, there is no need to tip your waiter, because he has a salary. I've lived in Europe for most of the last 20 years. When I first moved here, the main things were the quality and efficiency of public transportation. Where I am from, Oklahoma City, there is almost no public transportation. The fact that sometimes when you go to the doctor they basically just tell you, yeah, you're sick. You need to go home, drink lots of fluids, and rest. In the US it seemed like regardless of what the ailment was you were gonna get a prescription for something. In my experience, people here communicate much more directly, and if you are not used to it, it might seem rude. The lack of a copay for things like doctor's visits, physical therapy, etc., along with a price cap on prescription drugs. The attitude toward customer service. Back home, in the US I was a customer service manager at a retail chain in college. The standard practice was that if someone complained, regardless of how ridiculous the complaint was, we just gave them a coupon for 10% off or something. Here, if you are unhappy with the service at a store and ask to speak to the manager is probably just going to tell you to go shop somewhere else if you don't like it here. Holidays. Europeans get so much paid time off. I've gotten into arguments with some of my American friends because they legitimately believe tons of Europeans opt out of taking their PTO because there's so much work to do. I don't buy that. People would riot. Anywhere I went in late July-August, there were tons of shops closed cause people were spending the month with their families enjoying their time off, that and public bathroom stalls going all the way down to the floor. You'll understand privacy. I arrived to the Netherlands. Rode about 1.5 hours worth of trains from Amsterdam to my destination. When we hit my final destination, a woman in her late 50s, eyeballing here, so 5 or tape, is in front of me. She has a long black cloth case strapped to her back that looks like it might have a guitar or similarly shaped object. No. It was a longboard. She pulls it out and skates off into the distance. I'm flustered and just stood there for a minute thinking through what I just saw. Europeans dress up for the day. Y'all don't wear athletic shorts and tennis shoes. Like just going to the store, why I gotta dress up decent enough? How polite everyone was. How fresh the food was from restaurants. The simplicity of fruit stands at markets. How easy it was to get around by train. Backpacked Europe for a month in 2017, England, France, Italy, Switzerland, edit, I live in South Florida. What is a train? Cashiers in grocery stores sat in chairs as they rang up my yummy non-GMO cheese and bread. They also didn't feel any job pressure to chat or smile or act like your best friend. They just worked and don't give a foo. It was amazing. The amount of casual nudity on TV. I had to chuckle at all the naked breasts frequently visible. Europeans are just healthier in their views of sexuality and nudity. We Americans are ridiculous prudes by comparison. Oh, and Belgian chocolate is better than sex. Often. Italy, the abundance of inexpensive and very good red and white wines. Amazing. Amsterdam, most things are designed to be practical. The people are polite and practical as well. No large, fancy cars. Both places, the fact that I could jump on a train and get to most places in Europe was really cool. Boobies on billboards. When I was around 4 or 5 back in the early 80s, I lived in Germany. We were driving down the street one day and I was extremely surprised and embarrassed to see casual nudity in public. Now that I'm older, I realize America has some prudish sensibilities. LOL. One time in Milan, I went down in shorts to see the Duomo Cathedral, and just outside there was a newsstand with a big poster of that month's Topless Elle magazine cover. Thought to myself, that's not very respectful, then went in and did the tour. There were some noisy kids inside and again I thought, that's not very respectful. When I was leaving, I saw a sign, please respect our cathedral and do not enter if wearing shorts. Oops. Apparently you can get hurt and not go into debt. This may sound weird, but how much they ate. Americans are the fat ones who eat too much, so the stereotype goes, but I took a semester in rural Germany in middle school, breakfast, morning break snack, lunch, afternoon break snack, snacks in town after school let out, dinner when you got home, and occasionally this late night meal when my host parents got home, etc. Don't get me wrong, all of it was more fresh and 10x better than the literal plastic Americans think is okay to eat on a normal basis, but I was constantly full for like the first week because I was too awkward not to eat the snacks my host mom had packed. Eventually ended up refusing things, and my host sister thought I was sick because I wasn't eating every time the group was or something. Ironically, I actually lost weight during the trip, probably because the food is just generally better for you. We did live on a farm too, so it was insanely fresh. Right before the pandemic I spent 8 months in Germany training for a job. Boobs everywhere. Not sure why we're so prude in America, but Germans straight up do not give a fuck about being naked. Topless chicks at the pool and dudes taking way too long to change clothes. I loved driving over there. Coming from a big US city where it's a free-for-all, it was so nice driving when everyone follows the rules. The vast majority of drivers followed the speed limit and no hogging the left lane. Smoking is a lot more accepted. You feel like you're in a 60s movie. Coming from the land of 24/7, it takes some getting used to not having stores open on Sunday. At home I do a lot of grocery shopping and errands on Sunday. In Germany everything is closed and people just hang out with the family and relax in Sundays. High prices for gas, food, overall costs in the bigger cities like London, Paris, and Berlin. Paying for water when dining and public restrooms were also a shock. How accessible different countries are. I grew up on the US-Mexico border and crossed frequently, so I was fairly used to frequent international travel, but Europe is on a whole other level. Having 50 completely different languages, foods, peoples, and cultures a short train ride away is a pretty magical thing if you're not used to it. In Texas I drive 6 hours to visit home all the time. In Europe you can transverse most countries in that amount of time. This was years ago, when I spent 2 years in France and Germany. Driving was a pleasant way to sightsee there. But my biggest shock was not on European roads. It was when I finally returned to the US, and encountered never-ending commercial billboards on our highways. I had gotten so used to their absence in Europe that I had forgotten how much they cluttered up our roads. How cheap it is to go out with friends bar hopping. No tipping, no confusing sales tax, you can find a beer for €3 in most places. I felt safe at night in Barcelona, Madrid, Copenhagen, Lisbon. In the US I feel like I have to keep my guard up to not be violently mugged. In Europe the most you have to be scared of is being pickpocketed. The acceptance of people speaking other languages. Back in the States, we have idiots that yell, speak English or get the hell out of my country. LOL, this definitely happens in Europe as well. I'm an immigrant to Iceland. I definitely had an Icelandic boomer yelling at me today that he should be able to speak his language in his country. I was speaking Icelandic, but I have an accent and I made a minor grammatical error. So the US is not alone here. How other Americans look and act when touring Europe. I was shocked and appalled to see Americans in the square in front of the Notre Dame acting like they were at a county carnival and dressed like they were too. Bright and gaudy and ugly with neon everything, baggy clothes, shorts, shoes with white socks pulled up to knees. The kids and teens weren't much better. I understood then what the ugly American trope was. Air conditioning, I thought it was everywhere. And turned out it wasn't. Very sweaty time during a heatwave one summer. How impolite and overbearing American officials were when we came back home. GF and I did a wonderful whirlwind tour in 2015, visiting about 10 cities and villages over 2 weeks' time. Prague, Vienna, Venice, Pisa, Antibes, Annette, Paris, Salisbury, London. Everyone we met was friendly, polite, and helpful. No hassles at all for the little mistakes infrequent travelers might make in unfamiliar surroundings. Arrived back in Boston and didn't even make it out of the airport without have to put up with some customs Nazi screaming at us for not using a cart to wheel our bags to his inspection station. As if we should automatically know what the cart procedure was in his particular fiefdom, and shame on us for taking an extra 5 seconds to carry our bags to his post. Edit, of course, Pisa, not pizza. How strange public behavior actually stands out there and how people observe others more closely. My husband is from France but has lived in the US for almost 10 years. We went back to visit and took a vacation in France with his parents. At one point my husband was being a doofus and dashed across a parking lot and hid behind a tree. He startled a man on the other end of the lot, who then peered around his car and moved cautiously on the perimeter of the lot while eyeing my husband for more sudden movements. In the US I've just noticed that outlandish, goofy behavior is a part of the culture, whereas Europeans tend to be a bit more formal in public unless they are drinking. Pretty sure a guy running around a parking lot darting behind trees startling strangers seems weird here too. How dirty and sketchy Paris was. It was definitely shocking. Yes, this was my big shock when I first went to Paris too. It's a bit of a shithole. But going the second time and knowing what to expect, I really enjoyed it. I lived in both Paris and NYC. The latter is a literal dumpster. Big cities tend to be dirtier than average. Lots of stuff freaked me out in Germany. No ice, having to pay for water, no ice, trains that take you anywhere, and especially no ice. But one night I'm flipping through the TV, and I came across this show that was obviously a comedy, and it had the strangest puppet character. I was mesmerized for 2 hours watching this show that I couldn't even understand. Finally figured out the main character was a damn depressed loaf of bread. Got back home and watched every episode one saw there on YouTube with English subtitles. Burn das Brot. Ah, good old childhood memories. First time in Europe. I landed in Germany. On the newsstand in bold blood red letters a magazine read Die Amerikaner. I was like, damn Hans, the war is over. Can't we get along? By the end of the trip I found out Die means that in German. I was safe after all. There are no sprawling suburbs, it's just city and then suddenly fields and tractors. There are certainly less suburbs than the US, but city and then suddenly fields is far from the reality for most European cities. What city did you visit? This is true for where I live in Spain. Literally mid-rise blocks next to fields of corn. Everything closes so early. Depends what you're looking for, but I think I know what you mean. If you go to Barcelona, for example, you can go out to bars, clubs literally all night. You can start at midnight and crash at 6 a.m. But if you want to actually shop somewhere, nothing's open. In America, on the other hand, I really wanted to play some Xbox 360 game once but didn't have one, had a PS3. So on a whim I drove to Walmart at 2 a.m. and bought one right then. That kind of shopping convenience in general is hard to come by in a lot of Europe. Not just 2 a.m. Xboxes, but grocery shopping at midnight, etc. Everything. From a USA perspective. I was pissed I missed the tram only to realize the next one was in like 2 seconds or whatever. I'm used to waiting 30 to 60 minutes for all public transportation, when I'll even take it, the ruins legit just chilling everywhere and being ancient how convenient everything is. Walkability, little shops everywhere, how much every knew about the USA and how much it was talked about. Like walking into a mom and pop restaurant and the US news being on, that English was actually the lingua franca. I was told it was, but I was not expecting it to be so widespread. How good everyone looked, smoking being normal, that fact that my normal way of talking is considered too loud when LVE being called quiet and shy all my life, being able to travel the whole continent with affordable and comfortable public transportation. Hot damn. That Pulp Fiction was correct and Europe wasn't as interesting as I was hoping because the mundane, day-to-day aspects are basically the same as they are everywhere else. I found places like London interesting so long as L hit all the major landmarks and tourist spots. Once I did, it was just another city. I did enjoy my royal with cheese, though. I lived in Germany for 6 months, and I was shocked by the grocery stores. Like, there was actually meat in the pasta meat sauce. The microwavable meals tasted like real food. Even the produce tasted better. I realized that in the US how processed and crappy so much of our food is. I was personally surprised in Berlin and München that people would leave glass bottles out for less fortunate people to collect and turn in for money. It was a very cool thing to see. I imagine if you tried it here you'd just end up with a bunch of broken glass everywhere. The stereotypical, asshole American tourist, was real. I saw fellow Americans on vacation getting pissed off that a hotel in Germany answered their phone in German, but switched to English when they spoke it. That sparkling water was even offered. That they were charged for the bottle of flat water they drank. That they weren't allowed to take pictures in a museum that hasn't allowed people to take flash pictures for 50+ years, etc. I wasn't the asshole, but my god, I literally bought a maple leaf patch and sewed it on my backpack, school size not backpacking size, so I could fake as Canadian, on later trips. I finally understood why many of them thought we were all idiots. Second biggest shock was no washcloths in Romania, like they just don't have them in hotels. Third biggest was Eurovision and how freaking popular that is everywhere. Honestly, how small the place is. Major cities with wildly different cultures are all within hours of train or driving from each other, and that meant that massive diversity of culture felt hugely accessible to me. However, I noticed that Europeans did not seem to share this feeling. I had a conversation with a train clerk in Geneva that went like this: "I need a ticket to Paris today, please." Today? That far? Don't you know that Paris is over 500 kilometers from here? That's not that far away. I've driven further in a day for the chance to meet a girl. Can I get to Paris today or not? Conversations like that were common, where people would be surprised LD covered half of the continent in a day, or that I planned to see things in countries that were only a few hundred kilometers away from where I was. I had one person in the UK be genuinely shocked that I wasn't put off by the length of the trip from London to Stonehenge as a day trip, because that's like 2 whole hours of driving.